right, good morning or afternoon, everyone. We're about to get started on today's shop floor insight discussion and demo. Didn't think you'd signed up for a discussion, but I am going to spend a few minutes on a PowerPoint here just to give you some background. So this is Mark Hamlin here, and I'm going to take you through the session today. And we're just going to, do a quick review of InsightWorks, a little bit, of a discussion on what shop floor insight is. We're going to cover off sort of how we price the solution and how you can evaluate the return on investment for that, cover some hardware options, and then jump right in and have a look at the demo. We try and keep these sessions to about 45 minutes or so. If you have any questions throughout the session, there's a question box in GoToWebinar. You can put your questions in and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through the session. All right, with that, let's talk a little bit about InsightWorks. So we're based in Western Canada, and we supply software globally for NAV and Business Central. We do have offices in the US and Europe and Amsterdam, and a number of other offices in Canada as well. Everything that we do is through our resellers for the most part. So if you have questions about this or you need a quote for your software, feel free to reach out to your existing NAV or Business Central partner. They should be able to help you out. If not, you can contact us directly and we can do what we can to answer your questions and get you the information you need. You can check our website there. It'll have a list of all of our resellers that you could potentially deal with. All right, with that, short and sweet, let's talk a little bit about what InsightWorks offers. So this is a list of all the different products that we have available for both NAV and Business Central. So we support essentially NAV 2013 all the way up to Business Central Cloud for pretty much all of the top level products. There's a number of other tools and utilities we have available for Business Central Cloud and NAV and Business Central on premises that aren't on this list, but these are the primary products. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of each of these just so you have an idea of what we have in case anything piques your interest. But of course, today we're going to be focusing on shop floor insight. So first, Warehouse Insight up here. This is if you're doing any warehouse operations and you need to do them using barcode scanning with a mobile scanner or a tablet or whatever you want to use. So it's a complete WMS built right into Business Central or NAV, which incidentally goes for pretty much all of these products. They're built right into Business Central or NAV. There's typically no separate database or anything like that required to run these. So it's very straightforward. Everything is right there in Business Central. All right, so anyway, Warehouse Insight, ship, receive, pick, inventory count, all those kinds of things from a handheld device. Dynamic Ship often goes with Warehouse Insight, but it's a standalone product. Allows you to do shipping integration. So it'll talk to all your carriers, FedEx, UPS, Purelator, whatever carriers you have out there, generate the labels, allow you to do rate shopping, send emails, everything you need to do from a shipping perspective to get the stuff out the door. Does have LTL support as well. So very capable. If you need to get product out the door, Dynamic Ship is something worth looking at. Advanced inventory count. So if you're a manufacturer, you're probably producing this inventory. And if you are producing inventory for stock, then you'll need a way to keep track of that. Advanced inventory count, whether you do it with the scanner or whether you do paper-based, really is kind of a must-have if you've got a lot of inventory you need to track. It goes well beyond what standard NAV and Business Central offer for inventory counting. License plating is sort of an underlying technology. I'll skip that for now. Shop floor insight is what we're focusing on today from a manufacturing perspective. And sometimes what goes with that is this MX APS. So as you'll see, shop floor insight allows you to look at the schedule and things like that and manipulate it manually. MX APS will generate that schedule for you automatically. We're not going to cover that off today, but if you are interested, we can set up a specific demo for you. And MX APS will take your existing capacity, your existing load, your material requirements and availability, really any sort of constraints or rules that you have, like setup minimization, all of those sorts of things, sequencing, and it'll generate a schedule you can actually execute on the shop floor. And if it generates a schedule, then typically people will use shop floor insight to view that schedule and record their actual time against it. Okay, so that's MX APS. Counter sales. If you're a manufacturer, maybe you have a parts counter or something like that where you have to sell over the counter or even over the phone. Counter sales might be a good solution for you. It allows you to, take multiple payment methods per order. It allows you to take deposits, layaways, scan barcodes. It's really a mini point of sale system meant for trade desks or parts counters and things like that. Most of the people using it are actually retailers, but it's really intended for more of the industrial type people that want to run their point of sale out of Business Central or Nav. Product Configurator allows you to build up a bill of materials and routing based on configurations that you can define. So if you're building a bike, you can choose different wheels, different frame, whatever you want, and it'll build out that bill of material and routings for you. It will also allow you to do calculations and rules to help you define that product. And it'll also do assembly orders as well for, kitting and that sort of thing. Enhanced Planning Worksheet. So if you're in manufacturing and you're running the standard MRP, this guy is definitely worth looking at. It's a fairly low cost little tool, and it provides you a much better dashboard for your planning. So if you're using the planning worksheet in Nav or Business Central today, you got to drill down 50 times to figure out why the system is telling you to do what it's doing. Whereas this gives you everything you need at your fingertips, very easy, nice little tool to give you a better dashboard for your planning. And if you happen to be doing distribution-oriented purchasing, so you're purchasing for a distribution center, the standard MRP logic is a little bit noisy for that sort of scenario. This gives you much better distribution purchase planning tools for that type of environment. Okay. Barcode generator, if you're in Business Central Cloud and you need to generate barcodes like reports or labels or whatever you need to do, then you need something like Barcode Generator because Business Central Cloud doesn't have a built-in way of generating barcodes. It's a free tool. You can download it, install it, and then you can add labels to reports or barcodes to reports, whatever you like. Doc Extender is also free for Business Central Cloud. Allows you to drag and drop. So if you have documents that you want to attach to an item or to a purchase order or whatever you like, you can use this and you just drag and drop right into Business Central and you're good. Nav Extender is the same thing, but for the on-premises world. So if you're running a Windows client, you can just go to navextender.com, download that sucker, run it. There's no license change you need. There's no modifications you need into Nav or Business Central. You just run that app and you can now drag and drop any documents you want into any page within the Windows client. All right, so that's a quick overview of the basic product line. Let's jump right in and look at shop floor data collection, a shop floor insight that performs shop floor data collection. Now, this thing does a ton of stuff, and the simple tagline for it is barcoded labor collection. So what that allows us to do is using barcodes, capture labor time or just machine run time or setup time, those types of things. So whether we're capturing time for labor or equipment, no problem, we can scan barcodes to get that. Now it does a lot more than that. We can do, well, let me show you the next slide and I'll show you what we can do. So really, this barcoded labor collection thing, this third item down here, that's a simple way of describing it. But we can also do time and attendance. So we can capture, like a punch clock when people clock in and clock out for the day. We have facial recognition built in with that. So we can just look at somebody's face and clock them in for the day. We can also integrate with payroll solutions through text files or direct database entries. And we can also perform payroll calculations. Now, that's overtime and things like that. So we're not going to do deductions or anything, but we can calculate your overtime based on your clock ins and clock outs, summarize that and send that all to the payroll solution. Okay, so we have payroll integration and that sort of thing. We have basic shift scheduling. You're not going to use this to, schedule a whole bunch of part-time people, but if you have people working days one week and nights the next or whatever you have, you can set up those shift schedules ahead of time, generate calendars, those types of things. I mentioned barcoded labor collection a few times, but this manual time entry is also possible as well. So if you're using touch screens or you just want to use the mouse and the keyboard, we have capabilities within the solution to allow you to do that as well. Okay, I mean, we like barcoding because it's quick and easy and there's no data entry issues typically, but you can do it manually as well. And then a whole bunch of other stuff here we'll get into in the demo, quality and reporting and all those sorts of things that are available with the system as well. All right, so you get all of that good stuff and then you got to pay for it. Well, the cost is actually pretty reasonable. So it's it has actually come down fairly significantly a few years ago. So it's really a valid system anywhere from small manufacturers all the way up to guys that are running, I think our largest is probably 1,500 people on the system, 1,500 employees. Actually, no, I lie. We've got some larger than that. But at any rate, it can scale all the way from small manufacturers up to large. Now, the way we license it is by the number of employees, and this is always a bit of a confusing point because people think that that means you have to buy employee licenses. That is not a NAV license or a Business Central license. That is a license for our stuff. You do not need, for every person that works in the shop, you do not need a NAV or Business Central license for those people in the shop. What you do need a license for in the shop are the terminals that those people are using. Okay, so we'll talk about it in a moment, but typically we have fixed terminals out there. That might be a tablet. It's usually typically a PC, could be a laptop, whatever you like. But each of those terminals that people share would typically have a license. When we talk about Business Central Cloud, there's some options there as well for that with the team member license, but generally it's the terminals that get licensed. So if you had 100 people in the shop sharing 20 terminals, you would need 20 licenses for those terminals. And that's the Microsoft license. You'd need the 100 employee licenses from us and the 20 terminal licenses from Microsoft. Okay. When we do the implementation, partners will often do that, or we can do it as well. If we do it, we typically do a nice fixed price implementation and we walk you through the whole thing, and it's pretty quick and easy, generally speaking. And then the last cost consideration is the hardware, where those terminals that you have out on the shop floor, there's a number of different options. They're typically going to cost you anywhere from 300 to 400. I think, maybe bump that up 300 to 500 or 600 per station, depending on what you're looking at each terminal. Okay, so let's talk about those hardware options a bit. So standard PCs are probably the most common. People have a closet full of old Windows 7 PCs and that they want to throw out there or something like that. But another one that's fairly common is a Chromebox or even Chromebook. A Chromebox is like a little PC. It's got no moving parts, so it doesn't have a fan in it or anything like that. So you throw it out there, you hook it up to a monitor, and you're good to go. Pretty quick and easy to deploy. Raspberry Pis are actually becoming popular now too. People have done that. So these little thin client things with no moving parts. A stick PC, which is like a size of a remote control. You plug it into a monitor, and you've got a PC. Away you go. And a few other things there. Tablets are supported. We don't have iOS support. The Safari on iOS doesn't work. So, but Android or Windows tablets will work. The only issue with that is the screen size tends to be a little small for some of the things that we want to display, but they can be used if required. All right, so here's some examples. Of course, this is a Chromebox, a thin client, stick PC, industrial touchscreen, which, if you're in foods or something like that and you need to wash the equipment down, that might be useful. Otherwise, it might be, a little bit pricey. Now, regardless of which solution you're using, if you're doing barcoding, you need a little scanner like this guy here. And this is just a USB scanner. You can use Bluetooth or whatever you like. It's going to plug into the terminal, and that's going to allow us to scan the barcodes. Okay. Now, this is an example of a terminal. This was about 10 years old when this picture was taken, so it'd been sitting out in the shop for 10 years. You can see the pile of dust on that rubberized keyboard there. And this is the little thin client terminal. They've got it in a case here, but just standard monitor, little thin client terminal. This barcode sheet that they've got laminated stuck up on the terminal here is for things like assets or work centers or non-productive codes they're going to scan, and we'll see how those work in a moment. But that's basically it. That's a sort of a typical terminal with a little USB scanner, and away you go. Now, after we look at all those cost considerations, because you definitely want it based on all those cool features it's got that you'll see in a moment, you look at the cost, you go to our website, and it's got this return on investment calculator page there. You can fill in all the details about your shop. It doesn't include everything that might return some value to you, like some of the payroll rules and all those sorts of things. But if you plug in the numbers here, it's going to spit out how long it thinks it's going to take to pay back your investment. Now, the $6,500 here isn't a quote. Don't say, oh, Mark told me it was $6,500. You would plug in what you think it's going to cost with hardware, software, implementation, everything else, and it'll give you a time frame for that payback. And what we typically find is it's almost always less than a year, sometimes less than 6 months to actually pay for the software and start reaping the benefits just in extra efficiencies and cost savings. We also have an Excel version of that as well, if you like. We can send to you to fill in and pass around in your organization if you like. Now, That's all the salesy background kind of stuff. We're about to get into the demo. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you the types of barcodes I'm going to be scanning in the demo. So the one on the left here is a report that comes out in Naver Business Central for badges, barcode employee badges. And we have a kit that you can buy that prints actual ID cards on plastic ID cards and everything else with people's pictures and everything if you want. But really all we care about is the barcode here. So this basic report will print on, pre-perforated card stock that somebody can put in a clip-on badge holder and they can scan their barcode. Or if they have an existing ID badge, you just grab that barcode and you stick it on an existing ID badge if you like. And this is what the employees are going to use to identify themselves when they come up to one of those shared terminals. You don't necessarily need this. You can have people type in their employee ID instead of scan. But again, we like the fact that people have to scan. It eliminates people having to mess with the keyboard and prevents data entry errors, right? I just go beep and it does its thing. Over here on the right is sample production order traveler. So we do support jobs, production orders, service orders, fixed assets, and non-productive types. I'm going to be mostly working in production orders today. And this is a simple production order traveler. You can use this out of the box, or you can create your own, or you can just, if you have an existing traveler you like, you add the barcodes to your existing traveler. And so we've got one barcode for setup, one barcode for runtime, and that's what I'm going to be scanning to actually initiate, the clock on and clock off of these activities. All right, with that, we're good to go with the demo. Again, if you have any questions as we go through this, feel free to ask them in the question box. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start here with the time clock. I normally don't show this, but let's go through this a little bit. If you do want to use the system for time and attendance, so for clocking in and out, replacing sort of an existing punch clock system, you can use this tool here. And this little interface will typically run on a little Windows tablet or on a PC at the door, like by the change room. And as people walk into the shop, they'll either scan their badge, or if you've got the facial recognition turned on, they stare at the camera and it recognizes them, after a second or whatever. And that's how you use it. Now, if you're using barcode scanning, I can have a bunch of people come in and scan their badge to clock in. So I'm just going to scan somebody's badge here, and it'll come in and it changes the color and indicates who it is, and that's it. If you have a whole bunch of people coming in at the same time, they can just walk in one after the other, just keep scanning, and away we go. Template's going to fail there. All right, so that's the clock in and clock out tool, little punch clock system. Okay. Whether you want to use that or not, once they're in the facility, they'll see a screen like this. This is the screen that's going to run on the fixed terminal out on the shop floor. So you could have one screen, one terminal per work center. So you could have a dedicated screen that's unlocked all the time for that particular work center. Or you might have a shared terminal where, I've got a bunch of lathes and a boring mill and the welding and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they're all close enough together that I have one or two terminals that all those people share. Regardless of how you set up those terminals, you don't want people walking very far to get to a terminal to scan. But you'll have a terminal like this where somebody can come in and identify themselves to actually start working. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk up to this terminal. I need to start some work today, whether I've punched in ahead of time or not. I'm going to walk up to that terminal. I'm going to scan my ID badge. And again, you can set it up so you can actually type your ID in. But I scan my badge and it unlocks the terminal for me. Now, what it's showing me here is a blank screen for the most part. This is my time card for today. Okay, so my default settings are based on this terminal settings. It's showing me my time card so far for today. I haven't done anything yet today, so it's blank. Now I will mention down here, I scanned in as Mark H. Okay, so that's the barcode I used to unlock this terminal. We can do a number of different things. If you don't care about individual employee time, I could have clocked in as the work center. So I'm just working at a work center and I want to clock how long this machine ran for or this production line was running for. And so I can do it at the work center level. I can also do it at the group level. So let's have a cell. I'm doing cellular manufacturing and I have a cell, and I'm just going to clock in that whole group all at once and track the time against the group. So I can do that as well, named sort of employees within that group. And then the third scenario is I might have maybe an assembly station where I have 10 people working at a station. I might not even know who they are. They might be temporary workers or something. I can have essentially an anonymous group. where I can clock in and I can record time against a specific activity and just say, yeah, there were 10 people working on it. I don't know who they were, but there were 10 people on this particular activity. Okay, so again, I'm clocked in as an individual employee here. So I'm going to track my individual time and activities, but we can do it at the group level, at the anonymous group level, and at the work center level or machine center level as well. Okay, now back to me, because I'm the important one here. I've clocked in and now I want to start recording time against what I'm doing. So I walked up to this terminal knowing that I have work to do. So I walk up to the terminal and then I scan my traveler that says, this is the activity that I'm working on. So I scanned a production order. So it says production order. I scanned a single barcode. It tells me which operation I'm working on, which production order, all of those sorts of things are tracked there. Okay, so pretty quick and easy. It's beep, beep, and then I walk off and I do my work, kind of like the old Roadrunner cartoons, right? Beep, beep, and then you run off and do your work. Now, after a few seconds, the screen can lock. You can set up that delay. Or if I like, I can just scan my barcode again to lock the screen so nobody can see my stuff. Or if somebody walks up behind me and scans their badge, it'll just flip over to them. But I'm going to just scan my badge again to lock the screen. Now, I go off and I do my work an hour later or whatever it happens to be. I come back and I'm going to start something new. So I walk up, I identify myself at the terminal, shows me my time card, and then I simply scan the next thing I'm going to work on. And maybe, you know what, I'm going to do some asset maintenance, or maybe I'm going to inspect the equipment or whatever I like. Okay, so again, we do support those fixed assets, or maybe instead of fixed assets, I was doing some cleanup. All right. Now, this code here that I scanned, you know, that would typically be one of those laminated barcodes that you saw on the PowerPoint sitting at the terminal, where it's a non-productive activity. And this can be anything you like. So this can be, you know, cleanup, it could be waiting for work, it could be first aid or toolbox meeting or whatever type of activity you want to track. Now, you don't have to go to that level of detail. You can just have them focus on the productive time, but it's very easy to capture this time, right? I just scan a barcode and it comes up and it records what I'm doing. And that gives you the ability to report on exactly what the people are actually doing on the shop floor. So very easy for them to do, and now it gives you that additional insight for what's going on out there. All right, so that's the basics. Now, one other thing I should mention, I've got it set up so that I could actually edit this time if I want as the employee. Normally you turn that off, so only the supervisor could come in and edit this time after the employee is scanned on. But you can also set it up so that I can just use the arrow keys and I can come in here and type stuff in. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it allows people to correct the time if they forgot to clock in or clock out. And number two, some environments, you maybe have somebody working on the same thing all day, or maybe they only work on a couple things all day. So you could have them at the end of the day come in, you know, scan the two things they worked on and just enter the amount of time they spent on each activity, rather than have them clock in and clock off every time. Okay, so there's lots of options there for that. Now, I'm going to show you one last thing here before we talk about something else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scan a production activity here to work on. And this is this final assembly step on this particular thing. The issue is I just did this like a couple hours ago. I went in and actually did this final assembly, and now it's come back to me for rework because something happened. And so I still want to track my time against that assembly, that final assembly, but I want to track this time as exceptional time. This is not going to be normal time that we put on this. I don't want my supervisor coming up to me and saying, hey, you spent 2 hours on that thing. It was only supposed to take an hour. I want to tell them why I'm spending the extra time on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blame sales for it. So what I did was I scanned a barcode there that says this time should actually be classified as rework, and the root cause of that rework was sales, or it could have been engineering, or, you know, typical ones are things like material defect or equipment failure or something like that. And so what that does, I can still track this time, still goes to that production order and everything else, but now I can actually report on it on a weekly or monthly basis or whatever. I can run a report and I can see exactly how much time is going to rework and what the root cause of that time was. That's a very important. That's a big factor in your return on investment, because right now you may not have a mechanism for actually tracking any of that rework, and it's very expensive. If I spend an hour reworking this, that's actually cost the company probably at least 3 hours worth of time. The hour it took me to do it the first time, the hour it took me to rework it, the lost hour I could have been doing something more productive. plus all the QA, QC, all that kind of stuff that goes into, managing that QA process. Right, so very expensive. So making it easy for the people to record that, and they'll want to because they don't want to get blamed for spending too long on an activity. Making it easy for them to record that and easy for you to report on what's going on is hugely beneficial. Okay, that's enough on rework, but it's very important. All right. Now, let's say, maybe I don't have a traveler. I don't have paper out there. I don't want to be scanning. What do I do? Well, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to scan somebody else's badge to clock in as somebody else. And this particular person, this Linda person, when she clocks in, she doesn't see her time card to start. What she sees is a dispatch list. And this dispatch list, you get to set the filters in Nav or Business Central. And that can be based on the work center she's at, based on the time frame, really whatever you like. So this would show, let's say she's at, the assembly department. She's at the assembly station. This will show all the work at that assembly station coming up for the next hour or day or whatever you want to set it to. And so from here, with the touch screen or with the mouse and keyboard, you can tap on one of these things, clock on, and start that activity. Okay, so she doesn't actually have to scan a barcode or have a traveler to actually start an activity, right? I just hit clock on, and it's the same thing as if I'd actually scanned that barcode. She does her work, and then when she comes back, she can go and choose the next activity to clock on and do that work. Okay, so that's sort of a tabular mechanism for choosing what you want to work on and clocking on. And if you're on a touch screen, since this is just a browser, I mean, you can just zoom in to make it bigger if you need, people with big sausage fingers out there touching the screen, you can zoom in and make it more touch friendly if you like. Now, that's the sort of the tabular dispatch list. We also have the ability to see this thing graphically. So I'm just going to flip over to this tab here. And here what you see is actually a dispatch list, but it's shown graphically. So if I'm at work center, 130 here, that's actually a machine center, I can see all the work that's coming up at my station for the next hour or day or week or whatever you want to set that zoom level to. And I can flip between weeks and everything else. If I'm a planner, I could look at it out, month or year in advance or whatever you want to do. And what this allows me to do as an operator or a shop floor employee, I can tap on one of these, like if you have a touch screen, you just tap on it, or I can use the mouse and the keyboard. I can tap on this and I can clock on at this point here. Okay, so it gives us the ability to use this as a graphical dispatch list. I can see the work that's coming up. I can choose what I want to do, clock on. You notice when I chose that, it highlighted all the related operations in green, so I can see the rest of that production order. I can also do things like, if I just wanted to see that production order, I can filter and just show, the entries for that particular production order. And the other nice thing about this is I can turn this into more of a dashboard type of view, because we can set color rules based on the data within Nav or Business Central. Remember, this is all real time with Nav or Business Central. If I make a change on the production order in Nav or BC, it's going to, show up on here, and vice versa. So, for example, if something is starting late, it hasn't started yet, and it's past its start date and time, I could turn that red or orange or something like that. If it's being partially output, maybe I want that to be, green or whatever colors you want. So you can actually use the color coding capability to provide a little bit of a dashboard as to what's going on the shop floor. And incidentally, if I am only allowed to work on this particular work center, this view can be filtered just to that work center or whatever you like as well. So they wouldn't necessarily see everything, they just see the stuff they're supposed to work on. And based on color or these tooltips that you see here, when I tap on that, it gives me the details. You can change the information in that, so you can indicate how many are complete and all that kind of stuff. And again, from here, I can just hit clock on and clock onto that activity. Now, there's a couple other things. I haven't talked yet too much about the sort of fact boxes we have on the side here, but this also gives us the ability to see more than just the schedule. I can see all the additional details related to this activity. I'll talk about these in a moment, but pictures and documents and everything else from here. So it's more than just a production view. I've got all the related information for that particular activity. And then finally, the last capability on this is if I have the appropriate permissions within the system, I can use this as a drag and drop scheduler. So let's say I come in here. Now, typically this is used you know, by a shop floor supervisor or lead hand or something like that for more reactive type scheduling. You can use it to schedule out again, you know, a month or year in advance if you really want. So production planners can use this tool. But, you know, the typical approach is, hey, I'm a lead hand. I come in Monday morning. I say, hey, we've got no work for, you know, this particular work center or something like that. I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to move that and I'm going to drop it onto this work center instead on a different day. And you notice it reschedules the time because it's a faster work center or whatever, and it reschedules all the related operations around it. Okay, so we can use that for drag and drop scheduling, and it'll update the schedule for all the other operations as well. Okay. So again, the graphical dispatch or graphical scheduler allows us to clock on and clock off activities. It allows us to see all the related information. It allows us to change colors to provide a bit of a dashboard, and it allows us to do drag and drop scheduling. So fairly comprehensive little tool here for your labor and shop floor management. All right, so enough of that. Let's go back, and I'm going to go back to my time card. So I'm just going to scan my badge here. And here's my time card and the active thing. Incidentally, you can change colors in this view as well. So you can have the active time card lines, you know, set, you know, red or green or whatever you like. Now, so far I've been clocking in one activity at a time. And usually I get a question, nobody asked me this time yet, but usually I get a question as to, okay, can I have an operator clocked into multiple operations or multiple activities at the same time? And the short answer is yes. So if I have one operator running two machines, I can have them clocked into both at the same time. And I can also capture that machine time independently of the operator time. So if he spends half an hour setting it up and then it runs for 4 hours unattended, I can capture that 4 hours of that machine independently of what the operator is doing with some other piece of equipment or whatever else. Okay. We also have the ability to do batching, and batching allows us to scan a number of production orders simultaneously. So this is good if you're, you know, you have a dip tank or a paint booth or a burning table or something like that, where I am doing multiple production orders at the same time, or maybe even I have a sawing operation where I'm going to do 20 production orders in the next hour, you know, doing these short cuts. So what I can do is I can scan all those production orders in as a batch. I can do the work, and then I can clock off that batch all at once, and it'll split the time proportionally across all of those production orders. So it's an ideal way to capture the time across multiple production orders that are being executed simultaneously. Okay, so a couple other mechanisms for getting time in, being able to clock into multiple production orders simultaneously. Now, when I'm on a production order or a job or service order or whatever else, we have the ability to see some additional information for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to maybe scan into a production order that's got a little more detail here. So when I scan into this production order, you can see that, you know, we've got some work instructions. We've got the bill of materials up here. This can be informational. So all of this stuff has already been backflushed, but it can give me the informational view as to what I need for this particular production order or this particular operation. And I can also do consumption. So if I want to do point of use consumption, especially if I have lot numbers or serial numbers, like I grab a specific serial number off the shelf and I want to record that I've used that serial number. If any of these were lot tracked or serialized, it would enable that field. I could scan the lot number or serial number in, or just manually type it in, so there's no paper-based writing of anything. Or if I just want to use this to record scrap. So let's say, you know what, this has already been backflushed. I've used all 27, but I wanted to scrap 4. We can have the scrap code set up in here, or reason code, and I could record that with a specific reason code. Okay, now it does highlight and warn me that, hey, maybe you're doing something wrong, but I'm fine with that. And then I can register this consumption. Okay, so we can do informational bill of materials, and we can actually do that consumption. Similarly with output. So down here on the line, you can turn these fields on or off at a line basis, but this allows me to do sort of, you know, whip output. So if I'm in operation 10, like the first operation, I can record the piece count for that operation as I go. I can also do finished goods output. So I can come in here and record the finished goods output along with any lot numbers or serial numbers or anything like that. If this was a lot tracked item or a serialized item, I'd have the ability to specify that if I want, along with location and bin and everything else if you want to record that information on output as well. This also allows us to set up a quality inspection on output. So I can actually be forced to enter an inspection on this output when I'm doing that output. All right, and I'll show you the inspections in a sec. Now down here we see work instructions. So this is useful if you do have operation specific work instructions or production order specific work instructions. So if I've got, customer wants something specific on a production order, I can enter that as a per order instruction. Otherwise, these would be standard instructions that come right off the routing. Okay. Now, people often ask, well, where do these come from? Well, again, this is all real time with Business Central and Nav. So these are just all the instructions that you enter directly into Business Central and Nav. There's no separate database to enter any of this stuff. Now, let's say that, these work instructions aren't sufficient. You need more detail for that. Well, we have the ability, well, you can show the item picture, which may or may not be useful, but we do have the ability to show document links. And these linked documents, they could be anything that you can run on this particular terminal, so video or a PDF or an Excel file or whatever you like, that the employees can click on to launch and view that information right on the shop floor. Okay, so maybe you do have an assembly diagram that they want to zoom into and all that, or you want to get rid of the big, paper shop package that you put out. You can make some of that electronic potentially. All right, and then the last thing I'll mention here are the quality inspections. And the quality inspections allow you to set up an inspection form, like an inspection data entry form within Business Central or Nav, and then record the values of that inspection on the shop floor. So I've created one here, an inspection form, very basic. I just created a bunch of different data types here for informational purposes. Normally this would be things like inner diameter, outer diameter, wattage, color, whatever you want to put in there. But this is the inspection form I created. So I've got a bunch of different things I can enter. Some are decimals, some are text, and if I don't enter something, you'll notice that it marks it as incomplete. If I do, it's good. You can set up rules like average is a fail here. If I say it's good, it's going to be a pass. I can also set up tolerances. This is an integer tolerance, but you can go to thousandths of an inch or whatever I like. So if I enter something outside of that tolerance, it's going to mark it as a fail. Now and you can have drop-down lists. This is a lookup to another table within Nav or Business Central, so you can set up all these sorts of rules and lookup values. So this data entry form that I've defined here, I can assign at the item level, at the operation level, at the work center level, or any combination of those sorts of things. Okay, so I can have different inspection forms at different points in the process. And what it does with this is it'll store this information in Nav or Business Central, so now I can do reporting on it. So I can go in and I can look at specific lot numbers, so this will capture by lot number and serial number. I can look at it by specific lot number or item number or production order number, and I can look at my test history and do a certificate of analysis or whatever I need to do. Just as an aside, the certificate of analysis report doesn't come with the system, but it's easy enough to create for you if you want. Okay. Now, that's basically it. So that's really the shop floor interface. It allows me to, scan my badge to identify myself, scan the production order to start work or job or whatever I'm working on, go off, do my work, come back. So we talked about a ton of stuff here, right? We had the dispatch list, we had the graphical dispatch list, we've got all this junk on the side here, and people think, oh, that's way too much, that's overkill for us. Keep in mind that if all you ever wanted to do was just capture labor time, this is what I do. I walk up to the terminal, I scan my badge, I scan what I'm working on, I do my work, and I repeat. So it's beep, beep, it's Roadrunner, right? Beep, beep, and that's all you have to do. You never have to either look at this stuff or anything up at the top here. It's about as simple as you can get for recording labor time. All right, and we do have a question. Can the product handle the concept of crews? Yes. So it does handle a crew. You have that's typically in cellular manufacturing. The crew can be actual employees, like actual users defined within shop floor. So who's actually in that crew, or it can be anonymous where I can just say, yeah, I got 5 guys working. So whenever I record my time here, it's going to be multiplied by 5 if I've got 5 people in that crew. Otherwise, if it's a named crew, if you will, we call them groups, then I would have basically each person would have their own time card that's managed through a single group time card. Okay. So yes, based on that question, we can handle that requirement. Now, after I've recorded everything on the shop floor, again, should be fairly simple. There are approval steps that you go through. So there is a supervisory approval where we can identify, where the issues are. It's all exception based. So let me actually show that. I'm going to show you in the Windows client, but it essentially works exactly the same in the web client. And what that allows us to do is come in here. As a supervisor, they just open up a web page and they'd see the equivalent screen in the web page. And they'll come in, and for every person that reports to them, they'll see one time card, right? So they'll come in here, and this top list are all the time cards that have been recorded so far for the shift. So they'll come in, the next morning or at the end of the current day's shift, and they'll see one time card per person that reports to them. So if I have 10 people reporting to me, I'll see 10 time cards in this list. And within here, we'll see exactly how much time they spent on it, when they clocked in, when they clocked out. And then if you're using the time and attendance, we've got the ability to do rounding. So they clocked in at 10:21, but we're really nice. We said they actually clocked in at 10:15. So you can round up, round down. All those rules are set up within the shift pattern within the system here. And same thing with clock out, we can round up or round down. And that allows us to now use that information for payroll purposes, for sending that information to payroll. So what an employee will do is they'll come in here, a supervisor, and they'll see all these time cards and they'll look for anything that's red. Now, all of these guys are red. Normally that's not true. You'll see maybe 1 or 2 red time cards if I have 10 or 20 people reporting to me. And red is obviously bad. It means there's a validation error. So what are the errors? Over here, it tells me what the details are. So first of all, it tells me that there's a discrepancy between how long they were clocked in for and how much time they entered. So that can happen if they manually type in some time or whatever happens. They also didn't work their full shift, right? So they were supposed to work 8 hours. They clearly didn't. So that warning is there because we've got the time and attendance stuff enabled. And down here, it gives me all the details on a line level. So if I go to this line, it tells me, hey, you know what? This person didn't enter the setup time that was actually required on there, and they entered too much runtime. So maybe as a supervisor, I need to move some of this runtime over to setup if that's important to you. And down here, I didn't enter setup time or runtime, so a supervisor could manually come in here and enter that time and, be happy with it and then approve the time card. So what they do is they come in, they find anything that's red, make the corrections or, change any of the details on here. And then at the end, they select everything, they hit approve, and they're done. So really, if you have 10 or 20 people reporting to you, it's maybe 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes to do the time card approvals for the day, and you're done. So very quick and easy to do those approvals. Okay. After that, payroll or whatever can take over and run the payroll rules and do whatever they need to do to get the time moving through the system. Now, even before I approve this, on the production orders, I can actually see in real time what's being done on the shop floor. So if I'm a planner or even a salesperson, I can see exactly who's clocked in, what time is being put against that production order or job in real time, anytime I go into Nav or Business Central, right? Okay, now the last thing I'll talk about right at the end here is a little bit on the reporting. So we do have a number of reports that we ship with the system, but it's extremely easy to report out of the system. Most of the data that you need for any sort of labor or time reporting comes out of a single table within Nav or Business Central. And we have a bunch of jet reports that we have available for shop floor. We also have a Power BI dashboard coming out for it as well shortly. And what this allows you to do, I mean, they're fairly standard. This gives me productivity. I can filter by employee or date range or whatever I like. It tells me my productivity for that, criteria. This report here is actually quite nice. This allows me to filter based on the different data type or activity types. And this rework here is where I could actually filter down by the different rework types. So if I had my rework broken out into all those different root causes, like, engineering or material defect or whatever, I'd see a chart like this that breaks out the root causes of my rework. So hugely valuable there. And then just a pie chart version of it. And then hours by pay code, if you're using the time and attendance, from an operational perspective, I could see how much overtime and double time and all that people are using. And that can be very handy, to figure out, am I running my plant properly? Am I spending too much time on double time because I'm not scheduling properly, or we're overloaded, or what's going on? Okay. Hours by month is a deceptively capable report. So by default, all it does is tell me by production order number or job number how much time I put on it, and I can expand that and get down to the individual employee level and everything else. And of course, I can come in and filter it by time frame or whatever else I like. But because this is just done within, a pivot table here in Excel and in Power BI, what this lets me do is really slice and dice this any way I like. So let's say accounting comes up and says, hey, we need to calculate the burden. Can you tell me utilization, by work center? Yeah, no problem. All I do is I come in here, and instead of doing it by, document number or production order number, I just drop in work center there. And now I can see by work center how much time actually goes against that work center on a monthly or weekly basis or whatever I like. I can also use this for my own operational utilization planning, right? If I find a machine center that I never use, well, maybe I should decommission that or not schedule that anymore or whatever I like. Okay, so hugely powerful report, makes it very easy to slice and dice, and extremely easy to build these reports. Okay, a couple of questions. Okay, if you have different machines running on different processes, is it possible to shift jobs from one machine to another? Yep. So it'll do that. I mean, it's all manual. You go into the scheduler, and I can look at, the loading of the different machines, right? So I can come in here and I can see these machines have nothing scheduled. So I can just take anything here, move it from one machine to another. If you're running something like MX APS that generates that schedule for you automatically, it's going to do its best to get the stuff done as soon as possible. But there is another rule you can set to maximize machine utilization instead of, earliest delivery. So again, if you're using MX APS, it'll do all of this balancing and everything for you completely automatically, and you don't have to manually drag and drop. If you don't have MX APS, you can use a scheduler that comes with Shop Floor Insight to look at where your loading is and to move things around and whatever else you like. Now, one quick note on this, this works only with production orders for the time being. So this graphical scheduler will not work with jobs. The standard tabular scheduler, grid-based scheduler, this works with jobs. So I haven't clocked onto a job yet, but I'll do one here. So here I'm clocked onto a job, and I've got some custom colors set up which look ugly, but anyway, it turns a green when it's active. And so yeah, we can do jobs. But jobs are a little more limited than production orders because we can't use the production scheduler with them. And there's a couple other little things on jobs that we can't do that we can do with production orders. Okay. So that looks like it's taken us right to 45 minutes, almost exactly on time. Please, if there's any additional questions, you can enter them now. But if I don't get to them, feel free to contact your partner. They should be able to help you out. If not, give us a shout directly, and we'll see what we can do to answer your questions. And that looks like it. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.